Get started by going around the room and introducing each other. So Blair, why don't we start with you?
Certainly. Blair Littlejohn from the General Counsel's Office.
Frank Barbieri, School Board.
Justin Katz, Teachers Union.
Maureen Warner, Principal Rep.
Tammy McDonald, Audit Committee.
Dave Talley, Audit Committee.
Bung Chiu, Inspector General.
Elizabeth McBride, Inspector General's Office.
Joyce Edison, IG Office.
Chandler Williamson, Audit Committee.
Michael Dixon, Audit Committee.
Mike
Sorry,
Burke,
I'm late.
Mike Burke, CFO.
Nancy Samuels, Accounting Director.
Chantel Knowles, RSM.
Just in case.
Morning, Michael.
Good morning. Good morning.
Okay, over here. Got everybody? Okay. Well, let's first get I recommend approval of today's agenda, March 15th. Is there a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Carried unanimously. Also now, if you'll refer in your packet to the minutes of February 15th, if you'd review those briefly, and I would accept a motion to approve those.
Make a motion we accept February 15, 2019 minutes.
Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Carries unanimously. Okay, are there any public comments? I know there are none to my right. Okay, hearing none, we'll move into the audit reports, and we'll go to item 4.1, the October 8th unannounced cash counts at 5 sample schools. Mr. Chu?
Mr. Chairman, before we move on, if you can see on our minute on the first page, item number 4, the election of Audit Committee Chair and Vice Chair. And the recommendation from this committee was on the consent agenda for our last school board meeting, and it was passed by the board on the consent. Our first report today is the unannounced cash count. We follow tradition of Mr. Our Chairman Noah Silvers, and he would like our auditors to present a report. So we're going to do it today. The report was supervised and partly performed by Susan Kay, and then she also had a staff auditor working with her. So I'd like to let her do the presentation. Thank you, Susie.
Good morning. Mr. Chu's put us on the other corner. We've got more space over here today, so it's a little backwards in feel. So this was on a regular basis, we do these unannounced cash counts. They're not really that regular because they're unannounced. We basically take all of our audit staff, we all go out to a school, get there first thing in the morning, and we observe the safe being opened. We have we pull everything out, we compare it to what's on the drop safe log, and we count everything with the bookkeeper on that spot, and then record what we see, come back. After that, we'll actually follow up and we'll trace all of those collections to the bank to make sure that anything that we saw in the safe that day made it to the bank. We picked the schools this year on this particular account based on high schools that had football games that night or the night before, so there was three of the schools had football. It's kind of torture to ourselves because that can take a very long time to count out on a Monday morning. We had no money missing. The only exception was one school, there was $25 short on a change fund, which could have easily been deposited with some of the collections on a previous drop. As far as compliance with the controls, there was just a couple minor noncompliances at 3 schools. There was the kind of the things that you see every time that we do a internal funds audit that pop up, because it's usually anytime you have large staff, you're going to have noncompliances occur. So we had issues with the one issue we did have was with change fund at a couple of the schools, and this has to do with being a high school where they're active all year long. Your elementary schools and your middle schools, they shut down for a certain couple of weeks during the summer, but a high school's open for the entire time, so they may need a change fund in the middle of the summer. And our usual routine is for them to contact the Treasury office and have the Treasury get the bank courier to drop off money to them, but the couriers don't restart until school starts. There is, as you can tell from the response from the accounting department, there is a process, though, for them to contact Treasury for an exception, and that wasn't followed, so that's why we were pointing it out here. The rest of it is just minor noncompliance as far as money collection, the way they complete the forms, or not putting an entry down on the drop safe log. And I'll answer any questions if you have anything.
I have a question. Do you do this annually?
We do several a year, and this just happened to be the first one for this year.
Right. And you referenced that you do them the day after a football game?
That particular count in October, we purposefully picked some schools that had football games on Friday so that on Monday morning we could see what process they did with the football proceeds.
And when did the staff that did the audit know about what schools they were going to audit?
Actually, no. We did it as an unannounced cash count. We went out, without notifying the school beforehand.
Are you asking my staff know?
When did the auditing staff know what schools they were auditing that
About
day?
a week before.
A week before?
Yes, so that because we plan together and then to identify which schools we will go based on the prior year's audit findings and the recent audit findings.
And how many people did this audit?
Total of 5.
5? Thank you.
And then I supervised them.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions? Mr. Chu?
We select the schools based on their past audit findings. And also, when Randy reviewed the audit notes, there are always something that we'd like to pursue doing the audit fieldwork, but didn't have the time. So that's why we select these 5, so that we could actually focus on something that may need help. And also, I'd like to congratulate Mr. Burke and also Ms. Samuel that they have been doing a lot of training for treasurer and also the person in charge of collection of money, that we are seeing the downtrend of the findings. So I think that's attributed to a lot of the reminder that they received through the year. So you're going to see it in our next report, the district-wide internal funds management letter that shows a trend of going down in terms of findings at the schools, and also an increasing trend for the schools without findings. So I think that's a very good sign.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
I was just curious with Jupiter High, the $2,100 found beneath a desk school.
Yeah, that was addressed with the principal. It was obviously not following procedure of having that money put into the safe. So that was brought to the principal's attention right away, and that was corrected.
I'd like to commend Ms. Samuels and Mr. Burke as well with the findings, because I did observe a reduction in findings over the previous year. So it is a testament to you're doing a good job. And yes, I would still like to see the drop safe video.
Thank you. Good. Okay, we have someone that came a little late for introduction, so we'd like for you to introduce yourself, if you would, please.
Yeah, traffic is terrible.
Oh, tell me.
Maria Lloyd, Limestone Creek Elementary principal.
I can understand. I came from North Palm Beach, and it took me 55 minutes, so I'm sympathetic. Okay, any other questions or comments? If not, I'll accept a motion and a second to approve this report.
I move that we accept the report.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Carried unanimously. Okay, we'll go to item number 2, audit of after-school programs, revenue collections, and expenditures.
Mr. Chairman, Susie, were you the supervisor on this job and with staff? Would you like to call on the staff to come up to the?
Anna's coming up right now.
Okay.
I'd like to introduce you to Anna Santana, one of our staff auditors.
Hi, Anna.
Good morning.
And Anna was the in-charge auditor working on the projects.
Good morning. This performance audit was an extension of the internal accounts audit, and this audit was focused on revenues collection and expenditures of the after-school program. And we select as 8 schools to do our analysis, and based on that 8 school, we found the following issues or things. Beginning with the revenues part, I'm sorry. Beginning with the revenues part, the program revenues appear reasonable, and all collections accounted for, and also we check the attendance records and for the 8 selected schools, and 7 of the 8 schools attendance properly recorded, and just with one exception that we identify one student that was not registered, and we couldn't find payments of that particular student.
That one turned out to be a staff member's child that we determined later that was just kind of hanging out.
Okay.
In account receivable, we found that all school has some amount of the account receivable balance, and that indicates that fees were not collected in advance.
And also, Mr. Tolley, well, I'm asking staff to continue monitoring those schools with high account receivable balance, just to make sure that they get the help that they might be short of staff, or some of the collection need to be waived. If they do, then that the principals have to authorize that. So I ask staff to monitor it, and so that we don't see that much of account receivable for some of the schools.
Mr. Chair, by the way, we are doing some follow-up at certain schools for the after-school program based on what we found in here and also what we found during the annual internal funds audit too. So we are in the process of doing it now.
I have a question on the receivable here. The range from $147 to $59,000.
And that's looking at all 93 programs.
94.
Yeah.
Okay, so one program has $59,000?
At that particular point in time that we were looking at, the date certain for that program.
One program.
Let's let Michelle come up from, she's waving at me. This is
a pretty big program.
We have some very large programs,
Right.
some of our programs. Yes, we
Okay,
do.
okay.
This is Michelle Amram. She's from the Department of After-School Programming.
So I'm the audit compliance specialist for after-school programming. So one of the ways you might see that discrepancy is if an auditor came out at the end of the month and I've collected all my fees, I might have 159 outstanding. If I'm Sunset Palms with 584 kids in my after-school program and you came out the day I billed, you might see a $59,000 balance. So I'm not really sure because there's not like dates on there. So it depends when they were looking at the aging balance, because we don't have on there whether that was like a 0 to 30 day balance or a 30 to 90 day balance. So that's one of the things I could think of that might be that huge range that you're seeing.
Yes, because the analysis was based on the database that we obtained, and probably because it was not until to the end of the school year, probably that was the reason that they have a big balance.
It may have been during the early part of the payment cycle.
Yes, because the rule said that school district said they need to get an advance fees, payments in advance, but sometimes is
So they can pay at the beginning of the school year, but it's not due till the
Each
end of the
month.
school year?
each month.
It's monthly.
Parents has to pay each month.
So that 59 is within a 30-day period?
We don't know that.
We don't know it.
I'd have to get the detail for you on that to see what.
Is that tested?
As far as,
When you're doing this process, do you test that, the aging?
we look at the aging, yes.
Yes.
So if that was really old, you would know it.
Yes.
So we have to assume it's not very old.
Probably not. It could have
Okay.
been part of the,
Okay.
it could have been
Okay.
like they just billed. And like she said, some of the programs, the billings can be several $100,000 for a program.
Right, in an effort to support the IG's office, we pull backups from all of our sites in May so that they have them starting the school year so that they're not having to go out to every single site and get one. But that being said, some of our ambitious schools who want to clean up their database and do year-end maintenance, they bill and then give me a backup so that they can do what they need to do. So there is some variance that you could be seeing in there. I'm not saying that that is, but that could be one of the ones you're seeing.
I don't want to, I understand what you just said. Another question on the $59,000. The total program's $290,000. And then you look at one above it, it's $614,000, and it's only $5,900. It's kind of an extreme case.
And it could be.
On the surface,
Right.
it
And
seems to be.
that's why we're doing the additional follow-up work that Mr. Chu just spoke about.
Yeah, when I see it, that even it jump out, so I said, I want to know the answer. Why some of them are so high, like 20%, or some of them like 0.07%, so there's a big discrepancy among
Probably the
schools.
highest on the, well,
Right.
you said that was the range. So
And
it has to be
it's
the
a
highest.
range.
And I can tell you, it's going to probably be a couple of answers. It's going to be, as Michelle said, it could be the billing cycle, or it could be a school where they're not collecting as diligently as they should.
Okay.
And
Can you
also-
bring that answer back to the next meeting?
Next meeting, we
Just
will
mention
do our
it
best.
as a follow-up? I'd like to know that, the answer, please.
Thank you, Michael. Frank?
For the board meeting, can you give us, can you put a column, 30, 60, 90, so the board members know whether that 59,000 is only 30 days later, it's months late, so we have an idea what that school is doing with respect to that? Can you
Yes.
modify this report for the school board?
I think we could do a subsequent clarification. What we usually do now, because our field work for each school audit is we have a very short time period, like 2 to 3 days. I ask my staff if they find something that looks funny, that do not expand the scope at the time, but we will get all the data together and do as a collective ways. This is like for the daycare, for the child care program, that some of the schools that we actually focusing on are the ones that we have issued. So this is a typical report that we are doing follow-up work on the projects that we are doing. So in this case here, we see the highest number of account receivable, same approach. Supervisor, we have to narrow them down, and we will do a follow-up all at the same time so that we don't have to slow down the ongoing projects. And that's the reason that there are things to be continued and follow.
All right, because if you're saying that it was the beginning of the billing cycle, but you bill every month, then that would have to be like a $700,000 annual fee there, because 59,000 is not 1/12 of the 290, so that has to be more than 30 days.
Yeah, I concur with
yeah.
that.
All right.
We
And
do,
one of the internal controls that our department tries to do to support the principals is they have to submit their aging balances every month to our department. And if we see aging balances that seem like this, like I can tell you this is one of the sites, we do email the after-school director and the principal to notify them that they are outside of the parameters of collections. So that's one of the controls that we have. We are a support department, so we're more in giving them controls and helping the principal have the tools they need to follow up. But ultimately, it is the principal who's following up, so.
Mayor, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
so is there any way you know whether that money was collected and it was not reported or not deposited properly, so there might have been, I'm not suggesting there's theft, but I mean, is there a way to check that? There's $59,000 that's showing up as not collected. Do you know for a fact that the parents just haven't paid, or could it be something that was misappropriated?
So in that particular school right now, some of those, if I'm not mistaken, some of those balances are on inactive accounts that have been inactive for 2 to 3 years. So we're literally going 2 to 3 years back and making sure that the billing was correct. Like, did that kid actually come? is that billing for each month. So it's going to be a really tedious process, but we are looking at it to try to determine what part of that needs to actually be collected and what part of it is billing, so that we can get a clearer idea of that particular school. Yes.
An item like this should be rescheduled. You definitely should reschedule this and report back on that.
Good idea. Go ahead.
Moving on to the expenditure part, no exceptions. And on the expenditure part, we review non-salary expenditures and salary expenditure. On the non-salary expenditures, we check the 8 schools, and all the expenditures for the 8 schools were properly approved, documented, and appropriate for the program. And for the salary part, 7 of the 8 schools tested, 6% more or less the 6% staff after school scheduled hours were working more, like more or less the 6% that the scheduled hour. And just on one exception, one of the schools, the staff member were working 18 hours of the scheduled hour. 18% more than the scheduled hours.
Which seemed to be kind of a case of overclocking, where they clock in early, clock out late, is what it appeared to be causing that at that school.
Usually, finding like this, we refer to the principal so that the principal can address it.
And another part that we check on the salary part was the staff to student ratio. And that part, we check the same 8 schools, and 7 of the 8 schools, the average to a staff to a student ratio was lower than the district recommend to 1:18. And just with one of the schools that the staff student ratio was a little bit higher.
We were going to let Michelle talk about the staff, the students, sorry.
So in regards to the lower staffing, one of the struggles that we have as providing services to our families is that we have wait lists, which we really don't want to have. We want to service our students. And so the challenge is, if you've got 9 or 10 kindergarten students on a wait list, to wait until there's exactly 18, or 15 in the case of kindergarten. So 1 to 15 is actually not a low ratio for kindergarten. That is the maximum. 1 to 15, 1 to 18 are our maximums. We ask that they try not to staff under 1 to 10 unless there is a specific need, like a student who might need some special accommodations. But somewhere between 1 to 10 and 1 to 15 for kindergarten is average, is normal. Somewhere between 1 to 10 and 1 to 18, usually closer to 1 to 12 to 1 to 18 for our 1st through 5th grade groups are pretty normal. But like I said, to not service or provide services to parents that are on a wait list because we don't have exactly 18 students for that group would cause issues on another end. So we encourage them to hire and take people off the wait list as they can. So sometimes you will see 1 to 5 is low, 1 to 7 is low, but yeah, it's not uncommon to have groups that are going to be under the maximums and not exactly at the maximum.
And also, I may add that this is one of the observations we had in our prior year audit. Sometimes we see they're overstaffed in some schools. That makes the personnel cost much higher. And now we don't see much of a deficit at all. So I think that in terms of expenses versus revenue, most schools have improved significantly after we point out that they need to be more sensitive in the staff to student ratio. So this is just a few exceptions. So there are pros and cons. If you have too little staff, that might not be able to handle the number of students. If you have too many, that's good for the student safety and also teaching, but it costs more money. So it's a trade-off decision made by the principal.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve this report.
I'll make a motion to approve pending the follow-up on that accounts receivable item.
We'll do that.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Carries unanimously. Okay, on to the special review of Okehele Middle School yearbook collections.
I'd like to introduce Nicole Eng. She's the staff auditor that worked on this review.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This special review was requested by the former principal who had a concern on a specific yearbook fundraiser and associate candy sales. Both sales were handled by the same sponsor. So after examining all the fundraiser record and available money collection records for both sales, we suspect a total of $2,983 were not accounted for. Furthermore, during the review, we also noted that the sponsor did not follow the money collections and fundraising procedures. The report was later turned over to the police department for further investigations. Any questions?
You see that on this page we indicated that the police found out they couldn't identify any probable cause for criminal prosecution. So the case was closed. However, we did refer the case to professional standards for additional review for appropriate action.
Okay, comments or questions from the board? Hearing none, I'll accept a motion and a second to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Passes unanimously. Okay, Mr. Chu, update on the internal funds.
Okay. Thank you, Randy, Susie, and Anna and Nicole. Thank you for doing it for me.
Okay.
The last one, update. Let me find the page. Okay, we are finishing up all the internal fund audit for 175 schools, and as of yesterday, we are still waiting responses from 25 schools, and all the comments have been related to the principals, so we expect concurrence, hopefully, and then we have prepared a district-wide management letter to Ms. Samuels and CC Mr. Bird. So looking forward to receiving it sooner so that we could have it ready for the April audit committee meeting. But I can tell you that overall, number of findings had gone down by school levels, and number of schools without findings had gone up. So it's a good trend. And then we may have 2 or 3 items that need special attention, like we have in the past. They're almost the same. So I think that findings are there, but number decrease and good school increase.
Can I ask you a question? How large of an amount is this internal funds audit?
You mean total collection?
In total.
About $82 million in and out.
Do you have a report that shows the comparison from what you just said? One goes up, one goes down. Do you have like a report?
Yes, we do. Usually we have a chart showing you up and down. Yeah, we will show that color chart together when we present the report. We do that every year. If you remember that we have a chart, that all the findings and school, who had their finding.
Do we
and-
review that here?
Well, yeah, I give it out every time, yes. We will do the same.
After this April
Not this
response?
one, not this one, but we will give it out at the time when we present the report. That show you the trend for the last 5 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Next meeting.
So we're going to see that.
Yes, yes, by findings, and then by a number of schools that had that finding, yes. And also more detail, we give it to the superintendent, assistant superintendent, and the principal supervisors, there to tell their area of the schools, and then which one had continued repeated certain findings.
Whatever
so
the
that
results were.
They are well aware of the issue, because policy 2.62 requires that when staff evaluation is done, the attempt to correct findings is one of the criteria to be evaluated for the performance.
Mr. Chu, in the spirit of coming attractions, earlier this week, Ms. Samuels is always working to try to improve the compliance, and we've done things like the drop safe log and scanning those logs into us, and then she did a host of the online training, so that's starting to take hold. This week, just yesterday, Nancy unveiled a new report for our principals, because there's so many compliance things that we throw at them, from everything from teacher professional development to finance to fire drills to code red drills. There's just so much stuff. And what Nancy was able to do, she's not only a CPA, but she's very adept at computer programming and Envision reports and really harnessing our PeopleSoft system. So she's created, it's a 2-page report, but really it's 1 page that has all of these things that we monitor for compliance in the financial arena. And she's calling it the PFACT report, which is principals financial. Well, help me out. I know the T is for task, but what it does is it outlines any outstanding task, and then it links them to what action step they need to take. And if, for example, if we're looking for inventory items, it also supplies the missing items. So I think, it just got released yesterday, so we're not going to probably see the impact of that for another year, but we're hoping that that'll allow the principal, it's a monthly report that'll get sent out to them each month, and that'll allow them to sit with their staff and say, okay, what do we owe the district in these different financial areas, and hopefully make their life a little bit easier so they don't have to hunt around for this stuff. Because it's not just the school treasurer, we have document custodians out there, and their payroll process, their payroll contact. There's all kinds of people that are working on this stuff for them. And I really applaud Nancy's efforts to kind of, corral it into one simple report. So maybe if there's time on the agenda after we go over the 17, 18 audits, maybe if you guys have time, we'd like to show you that report as well.
I think you're welcome to put that in your response also.
Okay.
And something that we have done this year, that which is different from previous years, is that we usually put one positive finding in a report about number of schools without findings. This year, we had another one about the attempt that Ms. Samuels and Mr. Burke had done, that what the department division had done for the schools and staff. They provide a listing of checklists for all the things that they need to do, and all the things that they put in. So we have that as a positive finding, as number 2 finding on after the school without finding. So this is the year that Randy recommended that, since they have done so much encouraging attempts to help the school principal, I think it's our job to recognize that, and then he put it into the report as a positive finding. So you're going to do 2 good findings this year.
Yeah. I learned one kind of quick story. So we'll have all the school treasurers in next month, and we once that audit comes out, we always put the list of all the schools that are perfect, up on the board, and we applaud them and recognize them, and then we quickly hear from another group that says, I was only like 1 finding away from being perfect or whatever, and it wasn't my fault. It was the teacher who didn't turn in the receipts or something, and they want to strangle me. But anyway, the trend is going in the right direction, so I'm glad the list is getting bigger.
Okay, great. Ms. Chu, do you want to discuss at all this fundraising, crowdfunding?
That one is investigation that we don't discuss at this meeting, so it's just as an FYI item, Mr.
But gee whiz, we're coming towards the end of the agenda. No one would be proud of us. Yes.
At the last audit committee meeting, we asked, when we were dealing with the school bus review, we asked our management company to do some investigation to see if there were other school districts that might have a model plan or something. I don't know if you got any feedback from that yet.
I don't think we have heard from them, but we will follow up on the request.
Thank you.
Okay, our next audit committee meeting is going to be April 19th. Do we have any other questions or comments?
No.
If not, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
We need a
Second it.
Okay. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all for coming, and if you've got to leave, drive carefully, because it was a mess out there, as you know, and I know.
Oh, yes.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Have a happy Paddy Day on Sunday.
Yeah, that's right.
I'll see you.